Apathy. Apathy is that silent killer. It's not loud, it's not violent, not aggressive. Its power lies in its indifference, in its detachment. Like the guy that asked his friend, he said, what's worse? Ignorance or apathy? And he responded, I don't know and I don't care. That's the kiss of death. When you share something with someone that's very important to you, something earth-shattering, and the individual that you share it with yawns, falls asleep on you, is apathetic, what do? Even if someone disagrees with you adamantly, passionately, at least there's someone to talk to, there's someone alive. But apathy is that complete indifference, complacency. And we don't always understand the gravity and the power of what apathy does. I can't tell you how many people I've met who will say, when I was younger, I was energetic, idealistic, driven by a vision, by a value, by some goal. And in time, I'd become jaded, I'd become resigned, and ultimately apathetic. It is a form of death. Because life is all about mobility. Life is about energy, about passion, fire. Think of it, the things that you really fight for, things you really believe in, the things you're ready to pay a price for. That's what makes us come alive. Apathy is essentially, I don't really care, I don't know, not sure. So though apathy itself, you can say, may not be the most destructive force in life, but it definitely is the breeding ground for all destructive forces. Because when you're apathetic, basically you're vulnerable. When you're driven by something, when you have a focus, when you have a sense of urgency, that keeps you not just afloat, but it keeps a certain drive, a certain destination in mind. Interesting paradox. We are somewhat, life is absurd, and human beings can be quite strange, quite bizarre. And what do I mean by that? When people are suffering in some way, and no one should ever suffer, let me make that very clear. But when people are in a state of crisis or a state of challenge, having to fight for their values, and don't take for granted life and its gifts, that creates a sense of urgency, a sense of drive, a sense of purpose. It's when we get comfortable, and we always say to ourselves, hey, you know what? There's always tomorrow. You don't have to fight for something. The side effect, the terrible side effect of comfort is apathy. Which seems strange, because you think if you're comfortable, you're blessed with a state of serenity, calm, no challenges, no death, no loss. You think you really appreciate it, and that would give you the ability to have the peace of mind that we all so crave, to be able to pursue some of our most transcendent, some of our most noble goals. And yet you find the exact opposite. Where you find some oppression, you find some distress, you'll find a drive. When you find no challenges, then apathy sets in. So it's critical to understand, how do we fight apathy? Do we must have distress? Is there only one way to get a person to wake up? Is through pain, through suffering, through aggravation, through anxiety? It seems so. What do they say in healing and recovery? That the person has to hit rock bottom, and that's when you wake up. Is that indeed a fact? So let's talk about this. I think it begins with how we see ourselves. How we see ourselves. Historically, we'll go back a few centuries. Agricultural revolution. So even being a revolution and definitely heightened people's standard of living, but still, agricultural revolution meant that people were primarily working in an agrarian society, usually living around the farm, because the first thing we need is sustenance, is food. We worked on a farm, we toiled on a farm. If we were in a position of being a little more successful, we may hire people working on the farm. But basically, we're all involved in that, and that preoccupied most of our time. I mean, the rule in science is that if you can achieve the same thing in less amount of time with the same results or more, that's called progress. A simple example, the creation of the wheel. The wheel allowed the carrying of wheelbarrows, of other vehicles that allow people to carry things faster and heavier. Without the wheel, the human being had to carry it all themselves. In many ways, the Industrial Revolution, so industrialization, machinery, fossil fuels, replaced human labor and animal labor to generate energy. Today, with the world of computers, how much time and exertion does that save? And with AI and all the new advancements upon us, breathtaking advancements, I should add, it only gives us even an easier way to receive and to yield results that once took hours or took more time, more energy, more travel, more effort. So time is being freed up. And what are we doing with this free time? I mentioned a number of times that historic talk delivered by Admiral Hyman Rickover, 4-star admiral who rose in the ranks, was known as the father of the nuclear submarine in the United States. In 1957, he gave a powerful talk that in 1857 to 1957, in that century, what changed, the shift, that energy generated in 1857, 90% or 94% of energy generated in the world was through humans and animals. In 1957, 94% of energy was generated by fossil fuels and machines. And that way gave birth to, firstly, a skyrocketing level of prosperity, unprecedented, and also to the birth of a lot of free time. When you have to spend 9 hours in the field, the sweat of your brow, to produce a bushel of wheat or potatoes or rice, and simply to sustain yourself and your family, you don't really have much time left. And even if you do, you're exhausted. Any surplus was traded. Now, you don't need to spend. What happens with the 9 hours? You press a button. You can do another type of work, and that food will be delivered to you without any of that exertion or effort. Just as an example. So what happened with all the free time? So we'd like to believe that that free time was used now for the highest values, the most noble values that human beings stand for. No, that's not what happened. There was the birth of a new industry called leisure. Leisure. Everything we have today in our empty time, so to speak, whether it's video games, whether it's sports, whether it's media, everything we consume, from the most nonsense or even destructive stuff, is a result because we have time. And we've even mastered the art, it's even an aspiration for many, to become couch potatoes. To do nothing. You just sit and live vicariously through others. And that could also become that many variations to the point that it will become quite destructive, quite debilitating. This is all part of an apathy that grows out of comfort. So it comes down to how we see ourselves as people. If the purpose of life is to be comfortable as you can, and I'm working just to become more comfortable, then apathy will become the cancer that it is, that undermines and weakens, and in every possible way deteriorates and erodes the very essence of what a soul is. And a soul is a living, fiery, passionate entity. It's called actually a flame. It's restless, it flickers, it's transcendent in nature. However, if we see ourselves as souls with that fire and passion, then apathy becomes an enemy, not something that we aspire to because we like to be comfortable. You know that anecdote they tell. Guys in a small little town, every day you go out to fish, sitting at the edge of a body of water, a river, a lake, and he became an expert fisherman. And he would catch a certain amount of fish, which he'd bring in, and that was the food for the family. One day a visitor comes by and he's very intrigued by this town and looks at this guy fishing. He's an entrepreneur from a big city, comes over to him and says, I see, you're really a good fisherman. Why don't we go into business together? He says, what business? He says, I'll pay. We'll be partners. I'll pay. We'll rent a boat. We'll go out deeper waters, catch more fish than you're catching just for your needs and your own survival, and we'll sell it and we'll split the profits. And then what? The guy says. He says, once we make enough, we'll buy a fleet of boats and we'll hire people to go out and we'll catch even more fish and sell more, make even more profit. And then what? He says, then we can create a whole industry, maybe in other cities and towns as well. And then what? And then we don't even have to go out anymore. We can be doing other things. And people hired to do all of this. He says, and then what? He says, then we'll retire and go fishing. So the guy says, I'm already fishing. So what do I have to do all that to end up retiring and go fishing? So it all comes down to how we define ourselves. A few months ago, I was discussing AI, ChatGPT, all the developments of artificial intelligence. Same idea. People say, will the robots surpass us? Will they be smarter than we are? It depends how you define smartness and depends how you define a human being. If you're a robot yourself, the human is a good robot, smart robot, then well, of course we can build better robots. But if we're a soul, a transcendence, there's a certain intangible element that you can't just program. You could copy it, you could emulate it. That becomes what we do with our free time. That changes everything. So in this age, even though not everybody's going to argue they're prosperous, but everybody's comfortable. And I say comfortable, of course there are people below the poverty level, I understand. There's famine, there's suffering, there's plenty of that. But relatively speaking, we're living in far more comfortable times than our ancestors did. But therefore there's also so much more apathy. How many things do we fight for? Look at relationships, look at family. We become apathetic about that too. Everything is almost optional. Not only almost, maybe actually optional, arbitrary. Yeah, yes, no. That type of attitude. There's no question that erodes the very heart and soul of what we are as human beings. So, how do we counter that? By recognizing that apathy is an enemy to be fought. Shining a light on it. Because if not, by default, it's an invisible force, as I mentioned earlier. We don't even notice it. We definitely don't notice its effect until we're already in an apathetic state. And how do you fight it? By making it necessity for yourself and for your children and our education systems, that from the youngest age we teach each young man and each young woman, each child, from childhood on, from the earliest of age, you're here for a purpose. There's a sense of urgency to life. You're like an astronaut. An astronaut sent into space has no time for apathy. There's no time for hanging around, for leisure. There's a mission to go to the moon, another mission, and everything is accounted for. How to eat and how to behave and how to work. It's not just, I'm here. Let's find out, what am I doing today? Nothing. What did you do yesterday? Also nothing. Here and there I have to do something. I have to make some money. So I can do even more nothing. So if we work on this deliberately, the best defense is offense. Not to wait till someone becomes apathetic and say, okay, now what am I going to do? Not allow that to seep into our beings, into our psyches. By teaching ourselves and our children from the young age, you were sent here. Your life matters. You're indispensable. There's something you must accomplish that you and only you can accomplish. That is the counterforce to apathy, because there's no time for apathy. If you have a mission and you know you're driven by it, there's no time in saying, okay, we'll figure it out someday. So we have to see apathy as the byproduct, the negative byproduct of comforts. And we counter it by creating a deliberate plan. You imagine a company suddenly turns apathetic, starting from the CEO all the way down, starting from the board. The company is obviously not going to thrive. It won't succeed. The company has a mission statement, a vision statement, and it drives every department and every individual. And there are people on top who are hired, whose job it is to make sure everybody's driven. What have you accomplished? What are the goals? What are the incentives? How do we measure it? That's how we also have to look at our own personal lives. Just like a company can't exist without a mission statement, no individual can really exist. When I say exist, I don't mean survive. Can really thrive, can really excel without a sense of purpose, a sense of mission, a sense of urgency, which is the opposite of apathy. I'm always reminded of that joke. These two guys meet in the morning. Harry's sitting on a park bench, elderly Harry, and his friend Sid comes over and says, Harry, why are you so depressed? He says, my wife is very angry at me today. He says, what's new? Sid says, she's always angry at you. No, today's something special. What happened? When she went to work this morning, she asked me, what am I going to do today? And I told her nothing. And she said to me, you said that yesterday, that you're going to do nothing. And I told her I wasn't finished. I wasn't finished doing nothing. Nothing is not for us humans. That's just not who we are. It's the opposite of who we are. It's like taking a energetic, dynamic individual full of vitality and freezing them, tying up their arms and legs, not letting them move. Take little children as you see them explore, adventurous, free, abandon, always looking, always curious, and force them into a box. Just imagining it is painful, because it's against our nature. Our heart beats every moment, contraction, expansion. We breathe every moment, exhale, inhale. Life is mobility, it's pulsating motion. Everything is active. There's no such thing as inanimate, especially when it comes to the human being. So if we impose upon that a nothingness, an apathy, we're actually essentially creating atrophy. Apathy creates entropy. You can make that into a bumper sticker. By what is it doing? By freezing us, by limiting us, by putting us into a sack. The free spirit that we are. Think of it like a flame. Electricity, energy, is fed by purpose, by mission, by focus. Every morning and every evening we should be speaking to our children, saying, you are here for a purpose and I'm here to help you accomplish that purpose. And what is that purpose? Is to make your corner of the world a little better place. To use your unique skills and your soul to spiritualize the material of this world. Each in our own way. And if you're not a parent of children, say it to yourself, say it to friends. Let's get this message out there. Apathy is an invisible enemy that needs to be battled, that needs to be fought against. And the way we fight it, no, we don't fight it with weapons. We don't fight it with any tools. We fight it by feeding ourselves with a sense of urgency and purpose, which is the antithesis to apathy. And when we do so, it brings out the best in us. Yes, we have the tendency to fall back into that inertia state. Comfort, I'm comfortable. I like my comfort zone. But this is something we need to be deliberate about and work on and wage a war. The war is over your own soul. The war is over your voice, your song. To sing your song, not someone else's song, your song. And not to die with your song still inside you. Thank you so much. This has been Simon Jacobson, speaking about how to wage war against apathy. Please, love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, your comments, your questions. meaningfullife.com is our website. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, our growing YouTube channel, and please share. Please share with others. It's a message that, if you feel, as I do, worth sharing with others, please share it with everyone you come in contact with. Thank you so much. Be blessed. Don't be apathetic. Be driven. You have something unique to contribute that you and only you can do. We all need that as you need us. Be well and be blessed. Thank you.